Okay, we are going to get this meeting to order. All right. Welcome to our governing board meeting, November 19th, 2024. May I get a roll call vote, Ms. Balboa?
Here. Ms. Ekstrom?
Here.
Mr. Romero?
Here.
Dr. Ravi?
Here.
Ms. Natalie Linaros? Sorry.
Here. Thank you for my full name. Okay, all of us are here. Just a few quick announcements. I always kind of like to start off the meeting with a little trivia. Tomorrow is Future Teachers of America Day. So future teachers, think about, celebrate you and hopefully your future employment in TUSD. And also like to acknowledge tomorrow is also Transgender Day of Remembrance to remember those who have experienced violence due to transphobia. And lastly, I'd like to say congratulations to my colleagues, Ms. Sadie Shah, Dr. Ravi Shah, for their re-election back 2 Tuesdays ago now, November 5th. And I guess I'll also extend congratulations to myself, which always sounds kind of weird. But I'm looking forward to serving with them again come January for another 4 years, and to do the work that we have started and turning and making this district the best it can be in Tucson. And to also say that I do believe that this board has integrity, and we are privileged to serve you as your governing board. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the land acknowledgement statement, but normally we have 2 students, but we have one this evening who will read the land acknowledgement statement and Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm going to excuse me if I don't pronounce your name correctly, sweetheart. Leonidas Ahumada, so 4th grader at Morgan Maxwell. Leonidas, aka Zeus, is 9 years old, and he's wearing a red bow tie. His favorite hobby is going outside and riding his bike. He will be joining Maxwell's elementary basketball team. Zeus says, "I like my class because they work very hard for my education and my grades. I like my parents in school. Ever since kindergarten, I have liked this school because they work very hard for my education. Math is my favorite subject because I like long division." Not many people do. I'm glad you can admit it. "When I first started, it was hard, but now it's easy. And when I'm bored, I like to do long division." His parents are Jesus and Eva Ahumada. So Zeus, go ahead and let's start with the land acknowledgement statement. Mr. Armstrong, if you can get that up. Oh, he's got it. Okay.
On behalf of the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Zeus, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation on the federally recognized tribal land of the Pascua Yaqui tribe.
Thank you. Okay. So you want to tell everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Zeus. You did a great job.
He's better dressed than all of us.
I know he is.
Such a shame.
And you got a break tonight from the long division. Okay, so now we were going to agenda adjustments. Dr. Trujillo.
No agenda adjustments for this evening.
Okay. Well, I'll leave the mic to you as we're now into the superintendent's report.
Yes, President Luna Rose, members of the governing board, I join you in congratulating yourself, governing board members Sadie Shaw, Dr. Ravi Shah, on your reelection. It's always great to see the parents returning to the board. So we're very, very excited to continue working with all three of you for this next upcoming term. We get tonight started on a note of sadness tonight as we start the superintendent's report in remembrance of the life of one of the district's biggest champions, not just for labor, not just for bus drivers, but for kids. Longtime TUSD bus driver and AFSCME leader in the Tucson Unified School District, Cindy Graybill. For over 3 decades, 32 years, her biggest joy in this life was transporting our beautiful children to and from school, of which she did proudly for 3 decades, for thousands and thousands and thousands of students. Her other passion was creating an exceptional workplace, where working conditions that were exceptional for all of our blue-collar employees, so much so that she distinguished herself as a leader in the AFSCME community, a tireless champion for better working conditions, not just for bus drivers, but for our blue-collar employees throughout the Tucson Unified School District. And her third point of pride was always that she was a TUSD parent, and that her own kids came to TUSD, and that her own kids rode TUSD buses. She was a strong advocate for all of her colleagues and a big champion for the progress that our bus drivers have made in not only their compensation, but other working conditions, like new vehicles to the fleet, repairing broken air conditioning that was plagued the district in years past with our buses, advocating for new buses and also white fleet vehicles for transportation. Her dedication and work ethic left an indelible mark on all of us that worked with her. We will miss her. We'll miss her voice, not only in the negotiations process, but visiting the transportation hubs. Our thoughts are with her family, her friends, and all those lives that she touched during her 3 decades of service to the Tucson Unified School District, particularly all of the thousands of amazing young people that rode the buses that she proudly drove, bringing our most precious cargo to and from school. Let us now observe a moment of silence for Cindy Graybill. Thank you. And how November has been busy for me and my office, out and about school visits, number of events to share with the governing board and the public this evening. Had some wonderful visits in late October, first out there at Myers-Ganong. Very proud of the work that Megan Svanik is doing out there as the leader of Myers-Ganong. I met some amazing students. I met a 5th grade student from Sudan who just less than 2 years ago was very much struggling to read and write English and communicate in a brand new language in a new country halfway around the world. Now excelling, a member of the basketball team, writing essays, and taking a leadership role in student council there at Myers-Ganong. So very, very proud of the work that we see going on there as a result of the leadership of Mrs. Stefanik. I also had an opportunity to go to Hudlow and meet Principal Eva Almonte and see all of the amazing work that's going on there in the Hudlow community. Last week of October, had the privilege of attending the 25th Annual Educational Enrichment Foundation Ray Davies Luncheon, and very, very humbling moment for me to be able to share a few words about the legacy of this year's award winner of the Ray Davies Lifetime Achievement Award, the Tucson Unified School District's very own Dr. Garcia, Dr. George F. Garcia, one of the longest serving superintendents in the last 40 years, who was a groundbreaker from 1991 to 2000, his championing of dual language programs and multicultural education, and his passion for introducing multiple career paths through CTE and career and technical education programs in the mid to late 90s left an indelible mark on our district, and he laid a foundation for which I stand today. So it was an honor to be able to speak and share a few words about Dr. Garcia. and to celebrate the work of EEF, who had another successful luncheon, raising dollars on behalf of TUSD kids. Also had an opportunity to head out to Palo Verde High School. I want to thank Governing Board President Luna Rose, who was also out there, but as a band parent, I was out there, of course, celebrating all of our bands and seeing all of the wonderful talent assembled on that field was inspiring. So I want to thank Dr. Joan Ashcraft and all of our band directors for coming out that night. Every single band, I think, except for a couple of high schools, but pretty much the majority of our high schools were out. Full performances, full bands taking the field, celebrating some of the new uniforms and some of the new instruments as a result of the board's comprehensive instrument replacement and uniform purchasing package about 3 years ago. It was great to see all of that on the field there at the Band Expo. Congratulations are in order. I had an opportunity to attend the ASIALAS, the Arizona Association for Latino Administrators and Superintendents, as they awarded their Outstanding Administrator of the Year. I think let's back up. There we are. And this year's recipient is none other than Roberts Naylor K-8 Principal Bernadette Roslinhauser for winning that award. It was my pleasure to share some words about her leadership there at Roberts Naylor and to see her get that well-deserved award. I had an opportunity to welcome, I think the next slide, Gene, I'll just go off of the slide. Yeah, I had an opportunity to attend the Badger Foundation Veterans Event November 2nd out there at Tucson High. It was a wonderful opportunity to honor Badger veterans past and present. And what was really, really neat about the event is it included a flyover by the Arizona National Guard, performance by Tucson High's very own Mariachi Rayos del Sol, and then a reading of the names of every single veteran who ever attended Tucson High. And it was about 800 names that were read into the record by fellow veterans of the Tucson Magnet High School community. And of course, concluded with a 21 gun salute. So I want to thank the facilities team out there at Tucson Magnet High. I want to thank the principal for really making the place look wonderful and hosting such a wonderful event there for in celebration of Veterans Day and all of the Badger veterans. And I had an opportunity on Halloween. I think the next slide. Yes, I had the opportunity on Halloween to welcome U.S. Department of Education Secretary Dr. Miguel Cardona for a tour of Ross Rouge Elementary. We visited several classrooms and participated in a focus group where Dr. Cardona championed the benefits of dual language programs and just how important it is to be multilingual in this 21st century society, the importance of celebrating culture through language, and then hearing about some of the challenges facing our teachers and dual language programs here in the state of Arizona. So it was a privilege to be able to spend some time with Dr. Cardona. It also was wonderful to be there on Halloween and to see all of the beautiful costumes of the Ross Rouge community as we walked up and down the halls. Dr. Cardona himself, a dual language product, I think was inspired by what he saw and did share some words that in all of his travels around the U.S., he would be challenged to find more vibrant dual language programs than what he saw at Ross Rouge and what we have here in TUSD. So very, very thankful for his visit. Next slide. And I had an opportunity on Veterans Day, or at least part of our holiday. I was invited to address a group of facilities professionals from around the nation as part of the Arizona K-12 Facilities Forum in Tempe. And so had an opportunity to share some of the wonderful achievements that we've achieved from an operations perspective with these facilities professionals from around the nation, including our success with solar and how over 45% of our power is generated by the solar arrays on all of our buildings and district facilities. The arrival of the district's first 10 fully electric school buses, the commitment that we have to over 200 acres of our fields and playing surfaces using the districts or connected to the city's recycled water supply. So we're very, very excited to share that victory. We talked about Governing Board Policy ECF, which sets a new vision for facilities, an ambitious vision for facilities for 10, 20 years in the future. And I saw nothing but excitement. And we had a lot of facilities professionals asking a lot of questions about Tucson Unified and wanting to come to tours and see what we're doing out there at Monzo with agrovoltaic gardens, and to come see our solar panels. So it was a great opportunity to share a lot of our successes and our vision moving forward with education facilities professionals from around the country. And this Saturday, one of my favorite events every year is to go up to Camp Cooper for their donor recognition. But this year, it was different because it was the 60th anniversary celebration of Camp Cooper. It was an opportunity not only to thank all of our donors and to celebrate the 60th anniversary of what I've always referred to in Tucson Unified as the district's most beautiful classroom. It is the premier outdoor educational experience that we offer, not just in Tucson Unified, but here in Pima County. And it was also special because it marked the opening of the newly renovated bathrooms and showers, brought to you by not only the TUSD bond, but also the generation of the donors that make the Camp Cooper partnership happen. I do want to thank Dr. Ravi Shah for coming out with his kids, enjoying the evening, enjoying a lot of the festivities. It was a wonderful time, an opportunity to celebrate Camp Cooper. We've got some staff appreciation days that we don't want to forget as we get into late November. Education Support Professionals Day, Wednesday, November 20th, honors the vital contributions of school support staff. Our school support staff, all of you play a vital role in ensuring our students have a safe, supportive, and enriching environment in which to learn and grow. Paraprofessionals, school nurses, health assistants, food service workers, custodians, monitors, counselors, all of our other support roles, you play an absolutely amazing role in making sure that our students have a safe and an inspirational learning experience. Substitute Educators Day, Friday, November 22nd, created by the National Education Association to recognize the important role that substitute teachers play in the educational system. Your flexibility, professionalism, and your dedication to our students ensure that learning never stops, even when our educators sometimes need to step away. And Sunday, December 8th, it is National Blue Collar Day, and that the actual observation is on Monday, December 9th, but the actual day is December 8th. And this is for our blue collar workers in observance of their commitment and their passion for making sure that our students and our employees have world-class facilities. We're grateful for the hardworking employees who make our district run smoothly every day, whether it's operations, facilities, fixing our buses, driving our buses, walking our halls as monitors, serving in our classrooms as parapros and teacher assistants, opening up our cafeterias and serving our wonderful students, and of course maintaining our grounds and our facilities. So it is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the work that our blue collar community does each and every single day for the Tucson Unified School District. And we have a very, very special recognition before I turn it over to a couple of our programmatic updates. But tonight, I want to highlight some of the amazing work that's going on at C.E. Rose and what's going on at Van Buskirk. I think when we talk about school improvement, we talk a lot about assessment proficiency and making sure that students are passing the test and making sure that students are demonstrating proficiency on the Arizona Academic Skills Assessment. We talk a lot about showing growth on benchmarks and making sure that our students are demonstrating proficiency on benchmarks. But I think what we miss in that conversation is just how exceptional our schools are when they are working with students that are coming in off grade level or have been even set behind even further off grade level because of things like the pandemic or school-to-school gaps in education because of poverty or housing insecurity or moving from school to school. And we have two schools that are the best in the nation, amongst the best in the nation, at actually making up more than a year's ground in reading and math proficiency every year that they have the students. And how did this come to our attention? Well, it came to our attention through a project, a study that was facilitated by the New Teacher Project. And the New Teacher Project is a nonprofit organization, and they fund studies and projects across the nation examining what are the best practices for not just classroom instruction on a singular teacher level, but what are the best practices of schools making the greatest impact with student achievement on a school and on a district-wide level. So for this project, the New Teacher Project, they studied 28,000 schools, looking at schools that had demonstrated records of not only catching kids up, but moving kids ahead on a grade level by grade level basis that actually started the school year behind. They looked at 28,000 schools, and these two schools were among the top 5% of the 28,000 schools that they looked at across the nation for accelerating student learning, with Van Buskirk achieving an impressive 1.7 years of learning growth in math and in English language arts every year that they have the students. Give them a round of applause. This recognition underscores the dedication of Van Buskirk and C.E. Rose to creating a culture of belonging and delivering consistent grade level instruction and building a strong instructional program. Here is what these two schools do that's really, really amazing. They have an entire culture focused on one singular mission. By the time you leave C.E. Rose at 8th grade, by the time you leave Van Buskirk at 5th grade, you will be at or above grade level in English language arts and math. They don't get caught up in what's happening quarter to quarter, semester to semester, or year to year. They don't beat themselves up if they have a third grader coming in that's reading off grade level, that might be reading at a first grade level, and they don't necessarily get the student caught up all the way to third grade by that year. They stay focused. They say, okay, we caught you up to 2nd grade, but guess what? We're focused on by the time you leave 5th grade. By the time you leave us at 5th grade, you will be at or above grade level. And that is what makes these schools very, very special, to have an entire school community focused in on that mission, whether it's their teachers, their counselors, their paraprofessionals or teachers' assistants, their monitors, their classified staff. They are locked in on that mission. And they are locked in on making sure that no matter what proficiency level their students are at, that those students are constantly being exposed to rigorous grade level content. They don't get caught in over remediation to the extent that 3rd graders aren't getting 3rd grade content or that 5th graders aren't getting 5th grade content. They are lockstep in making sure that no matter what level of proficiency a student is in, with ELA or math, that those students are constantly exposed to grade level instruction. Their work in closing achievement gaps serves as an inspiring example of what is possible when an entire learning community commits to student success. And I think we have a video queued up to take you a little bit deeper into the magic that's happening at both C.E. Rose K-8 and Van Buskirk.
They were recognized as two schools under a 10-year, over a 10-year longitudinal study to try to see where our kids, when they come in, and they might be coming in behind grade level. And it was a 10-year study that showed that basically anyone that came into Van Buskirk and C.E. Rose basically caught up. You know, I think Van Buskirk was in the top 1% of the nation of being, they called trajectory schools, that went up anywhere from 1.7 months every year. So basically, if we have a child coming in, these schools could catch them up pretty quickly to transition into 6th grade by the time they left 5th grade.
It was sort of shocking and hard to believe that what they were telling us, using 10 years of research, that we were ranked in the top 1%, was very hard to believe. I felt like we were doing what a lot of schools were already doing, and what they told us was that we were not. We were doing some things very well, and they wanted to find out what it was that we were doing to make such an impact on the kids and their growth.
We're helping you because we want you to be a better student, and we want you to one day go out into the world and make, a difference. And so a lot of it, we have that mindset as a school, and I think that really supports, the findings and the research. But again, it was really kind of humbling, I guess, to say that our school was one of the top 7. And I'm super proud of our school and our teachers and our staff and our students and our families too, because without our families, we wouldn't be able to be where we're at right now.
Well, the first thing that I do is know where my students are, so what they know. That's very important, and that's part of building relationships with my students, which is fundamental in order to achieve anything in my class. I want students to feel comfortable, to be able to trust me, to be able to tell me when they are struggling with something. From that, we do pre-assessments from the material. So if I'm teaching math, let's say we're gonna start fractions. I wanna know what they know before I start teaching 4th grade curriculum. So I want to close those gaps while still teaching 4th grade curriculum. And that's when I do my small group interventions for both math and reading.
One of the ways that I try to catch students up is, again, we have allocated time. Like I said, specifically that win time, where we can really focus and hone in on those particular students that really need that additional support. But again, within my lessons, like I said, once I'm done with my direct instruction and our guided instruction, I try to pull those kids aside, whether it's our math time, our reading time, and I try to make it a point to specifically work with them on either the concept that they're struggling with or the skills that they're lacking. And I do my best to try to remediate and make sure that they're filling in those gaps that they have in their learning.
A school like this, and a school like many of our schools, in our district, have to keep their sword sharp. So they need to continually be consistent with these practices that they're doing in order to serve our kids better. Pull them, as we say, push them from the bottom and pull them from the top. You have to continuously do that. So there's really no rest for a Van Busker or a C.E. Rose in a Title I school. They got to keep that sword sharp, continue going forward. And that's a lesson that we cannot get comfortable. We need to do what's best for our kids and just keep on pushing that way. So they know what to do. Now they need to keep doing it, and they need to put it on steroids to continue doing that, to address things such as you said, learning loss and different things that may come.
Well, I'm sure I speak for every parent in the room if you told me that there is a school where my kid is going to learn more in a year than at a school down the street, that they're actually going to learn enough content for 1.8 year. I'm going to say sign me up. And that's whether my kid is behind or on track or even accelerated. So it is absolutely amazing. This kind of excellence doesn't happen without consequential leadership, game-changing, impactful leadership. So I want to recognize the principals. If I can ask Mrs. Alma Carmona Alday come forward, Mrs. Victoria Barajas, we have a special recognition for you. So on behalf of the Tucson Unified School District, I have some certificates here for both of you for this wonderful achievement, as well as some plaques for outstanding performance in leadership and leading your schools to new levels of excellence. How about a round of applause? Conclude the superintendent's portion of the report. I do want to ask first our assistant superintendent for student success, Mr. Armenta, on top for the Tucson UTRI Virtual Academy. We do have a couple of brief reports that were postponed from the previous governing board meeting that will round out the superintendent's report this evening. Mr. Armenta?
Good evening, Governing Board, President Luna Rose, board members, Dr. Trujillo, legal counsel, staff members. We're glad to be here tonight to share you an update with TUVA. We were here last time, but kind of time got away from us, so I want to thank you for this opportunity again. Tonight, we're just going to briefly give you an update about TUVA. And just to give you an agenda of what we're talking about here, we're going to give you a TUVA timeline. I'll talk a little bit about alternative pathways to student success, program offerings, finding student success, TUVA enrollment, staffing, highlights, challenges, and questions. I'm not running this by myself. I am joined by Michelle Sigovus, the current TUVA principal. So I just want to give you a highlight of how we got to TUVA. So as we know, we encountered the pandemic. And so the pandemic put us into a situation where we needed to respond. I don't think the battery's dying. Okay, next slide, please, Jean. So we know that we got into a pandemic, as everybody know, we went to that process. So as TUSD does, as they normally do, we pivot, and we were trying to figure out some program that we could support all of our students at home. So we had a great architect in our district, Dr. Hewitt, who decided that this is a great idea to have some sort of TUVA virtual academy for our students at home. We also had a regional superintendent, Richard Sanchez, who created this kind of implementation. So these two individuals got together and they put this together, and you can see that in August 1st, they opened it up. At that time, we had our leader. At that time was Michelle Sigovus. So she started this program for us in August 1st, 2021. And as we started to see that it was working for our students, and as we started to come back to school and everyone was going back to school, parents were still responding and saying, hey, we would like this program to continue. One experience I had was out at Southwest, where I met several parents who said, please don't take this program away. So we came back and we asked for the board to support this idea. And so on October 6th, we came with the board to create the TUVA-Cole merger. We decided that there were some pieces that Cole offered to our students, and that we also felt that there were some pieces that TUVA could offer. And you'll hear a little bit about how Ms. Sigovus has continued with that. In addition to that, the board also approved for us to have the opportunity to create this as Tucson Unified School District's virtual academy starting July 26th. We applied for an Arizona online instructional program. We were granted that program. We were very fortunate that Cole had the infrastructure framework for us to take that forward as an AOI. So we were approved to be an AOI. As Michelle Sigovus and her team got into TUVA and started seeing the needs of the faculty and the parents and the students, they decided to create some sort of facility renovation. So the board approved a renovation. So we wanted to thank the board for giving us that renovation. And you'll hear a little bit about what some of those spaces have been created, not only for our students, but our faculty as well. Next slide, please. And just to give you a reminder of an overview, this is part of what we call the Alternative Pathways to Student Success. And you can see here that that is one of the offerings that we have in Alternative Pathways. We still want to make sure that we reach those students who want to do what's called self-PACE, formerly known as Cole, and Ms. Sigovus and her team have done an amazing job at continuing to support those families. So I'll turn it over here to Ms. Sigovus so she can continue to inform you about how TUVA is continuing. So, Ms. Sigovus.
Thank you. Good evening, Governing Board President Luna Rose, Governing Board members, Dr. Trujillo and Council Ross. Thank you for having me come here to speak with you tonight. Next slide, please. I show you guys this slide every time I come, but I always try and focus on something different. What I'd like to focus on is our ALE aspect of this program. We not only support students from TUVA, but we support students from other schools as well to be able to take some advanced learning opportunities. And so that's been very successful for both the schools and us over the last few years. Next slide. This is another slide I like to show you guys every time we come. It's important to know what a good self-scheduled student is and what a good teacher-led student is. And we often reach out to parents and say, are you sure you want that model? Or let's try this model. If it doesn't work, let's try another. Those self-scheduled students are great for those students who work during the day. They've got to support their families, but they might be able to spend nights and weekends still being able to be successful in school because school is important to them and they want to get that diploma. Teacher-led students are great for students who need that support, who need that structure. It's just like going to a brick and mortar school. They just get to do it from the comfort of their own home, but they have a period 1, 2, 3 students in the classroom and a teacher there to support them. So that really helps. Next slide. So our current enrollment is starting to go down, but not for a bad reason. We're graduating kids. And then in January, it's going to pick back up. So it's slightly less than what it was showing up there because that was from a few weeks ago, but for a very, very, very good reason. Talking about ALE again, we have 96 students for our ALE program from 9 different schools. These are not part of our current enrollment numbers, and these do not count when I get my FTE for our school. So we are really providing a service for those schools because they get to keep that FTE, but yet we're teaching their kids. And some kids take more than one course with us. We started new this year, creating a hybrid model where students could be self-scheduled, but also be teacher-led. We do not offer dual credit and AP courses in the self-paced model, but maybe a student might be able to make an 8 o'clock class, but they go to work at 10 o'clock and can't spend the whole day. So that now allows our students to be able to take certain courses and still be able to keep that job or still be able to have that flexibility. Maybe I'm really good at math, but I'm not so good at English, so I could take that English with a teacher, but that math on my own. Next slide. And I do just want to point out, I should have said that before, all the pictures up there are all pictures of our students and our programs and all the things that we do. In this one, you can see students are working in our building. We have a learning lab, so if students need support and they can't do it from home, but they still want that online learning environment, or maybe they need that really small school. We usually only have about 12 or so kids in our lab on a daily basis. They can still get that extra support from a teacher, that extra support from our success specialist. So our staffing list is up there. Being sure to highlight our ex-ed teachers, our ELD teachers, our CSP and MTSS. Those are all people that support our kids. Our counselors, we have a high need with our counselors because students are constantly completing courses and moving on to the next. We also got an instructional specialist, which I'll talk about on the next slide too. Some highlights we have. We got awarded alt school status starting in 2023. So we are now officially an alt school, which just helps us in supporting kids and allowed me to do some great things for our students like work study. So they could be able to work and get credit for doing things like that. We are a Title I school this year, so that allowed me to get a new college and career counselor. We didn't have one before. So pushing those kids to what do they do after TUVA, we didn't have that. We have that now this year through Title I. Also our student success specialist. Our students, when they miss school, they get a phone call home. There's those robocalls. You guys, I'm sure, have heard those before. You forgot to call your child in, and they remind you like your child's missed 1 or more periods. We don't have that for our self-scheduled students. And so we really want to make sure that those scholars stayed on track and there was somebody tracking them. Our student success specialist now makes those phone calls. If a kid hasn't logged in a couple of days, they're calling home. And it's been tremendous. He just started a few weeks ago and it has already made a huge impact on our program. We have the Zoom teacher support. We have a Zoom help desk. I would encourage you guys, when you have a chance, just to pop in and see it. It's kind of fun. It's on our webpage. You just click the button and you're in our front office. It's a lot of, and you can get to whoever you need to get to ask any questions. It's fabulous. But our self-paced teachers are there now too. So we have, last quarter we had 417 courses completed. This was as of a few weeks ago. We now have over 300 courses completed for this quarter. And that's because students can go in, meet with their teacher, get help. The teachers can push them, get them through those courses, and help them be successful. And as of this, we had 7 students graduated. We now have 10 students graduated. We have a bunch that are just like they're finishing up their last class. So right now it's going to start being like a student a day that we're going to be graduating out. So I'm super excited about that. Next slide. Our challenges. So we do have some challenges that we're working through. Every school does. One is integrating our curriculum with the Canvas. Not everything, we all use Canvas, but not everything integrates with Canvas. So a lot of times we have to find creative ways to do that. In a brick and mortar school, you can use Canvas, but if this doesn't work, well, here, let me just throw you the book. We don't have that option. So we really have to find creative ways to make sure everything integrates. And so we've been working with that and making sure our students have access to the curriculum they need. Ensuring our virtual options for teachers for professional development. Now that we've gone to in-person professional development, I've been trying to work with the curriculum and instruction team, and they've been very helpful. We're trying to develop a path for our teachers when instruction is required in person, but our teachers are out of state or out of country. So we've been working with them to resolve those issues and make sure that our teachers stay as up to date as the rest of the teachers in our district. Working on getting our office fully staffed. We've got some new hires that are in process, just getting them set up and ready to go. Being an office member for TUVA is not for the faint of heart. We have to follow all the rules that all the other schools do, but we're always a little quirky and a little bit different. So finding people that do a great job of thinking out of the box, and I've got a great team just getting those new hires on, and we should be good to go. And then finalizing our TUVA building renovations. Our renovations, for the most part, are done. We just have some of those small items that need to get finished up that haven't, like rekeying and some things like that haven't quite happened yet, that we were just waiting for those to finish. So out of the challenges, I think we're still doing pretty good. Next slide. Do you guys have any questions?
Board members, any questions for our friends at TUVA? Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in for the presentation here for everyone. My one question: How do you deal with student engagement? I saw the slide with the picture of like the vice presidents, or they have like a student council and everything. So how do you facilitate like student engagement and student community building?
So we've been working a lot on that this year. We try and do at least one in-person event a month with our families, and our families have really taken to it. When we first started, our self-paced students really weren't involved at all. But our teacher-leds were very involved. And so starting the student council and being able to have a hybrid model, I have a couple of students who are self-paced, but they only attend student council because that was important to them. That was kind of the igniting dynamite that is exploding to now we have all these self-paced students that are also getting involved. And I think when students feel involved in a school, they're going to do well. They're going to want to do well. So I'm really excited to have those opportunities for our students. And then a lot of it is our teachers know that we are in our parents' home for our teacher-led students. So we want to make sure that we are part of the family. We talk to the parents. We say hi to them when they walk by on Zoom. We really want to make sure that they know that we know that they're there and that they are part of this learning process. And again, for our self-paced students, having that Zoom help desk has really helped student engagement because they know their teacher is right there at that minute for them. On top of, still messaging and email and all those different things, we do use Class Dojo for our elementary too, which helps to be very successful in keeping that communication both ways.
Okay. I have a quick question. So I see the current enrollment is at 1250. Are we seeing any projection for higher for next year?
We tend to get higher as the year goes on, so we'll start taking a nosedive right now because we're graduating out kids and we're not taking very many in because most kids are finishing up their semesters where they're at. As we start in January, we'll start getting a larger enrollment, and then our enrollment usually continues all the way through June because a lot of those students that come from other schools that maybe didn't make the cut, they start joining us and they find out in March, April that they're failing their classes, but they can come to us and start those classes in March, April, and then work on them all the way through June. So our enrollment, I think last year we ended the year right around 1,500.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I do want to say that as an Arizona online instruction, we do have access to the whole state of Arizona. And I do want to let you know that the infrastructure that TUVA does have with the technology team, they're able to dispatch those laptops and hotspots to the locations where students and families are in the state of Arizona. And I know that Ms. Sikofis didn't mention this, but she does have Day at the Park. So maybe she will invite you, and I've been out there several times to be at the park with the students and the family, and she partnered with Tucson Parks and Rec to make sure that they have activities for the students to engage with the teachers. And so I do want to invite you to some of those events that they have at the park.
Thank you. Anything else, board members? Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Trujillo, I just still believe there's another presentation.
welcome our Chief Human Capital Officer, Mr. John Fernandez, for a brief update on all the wonderful work that's going on with our international teachers. Mr. Fernandez.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I'm joined today, as you know, Dr. Trujillo introduced me as the Chief Human Capital Officer, but I'm also here with Monica Sanchez, who is our Director for Diversity, Recruitment, and Inclusion Programs. Monica and her team are really chiefly responsible for driving a lot of our international teacher recruitment, so I wanted to just introduce her here today as part of our leadership in this area. So I'm going to try to hit the highlights. This is the agenda of what we were going to present the other night. I know we went really late, so we're happy to have the opportunity to give you an update. I'll try to give an abbreviated update for you today, but just really hitting the highlights of what we want to share in terms of the progress we've made with regard to international teacher recruitment. And then you have the presentation, of course, in your folders. What I want to stress, just with regard to the international teachers, these are not brand new teachers. International teachers are those who are already teaching K-12 students in their own countries. They are eligible through a couple of different pathways, through their J-1 or H-1B visas, to come and live and work in the U.S. And when we target recruitment for international teachers, we're looking for individuals who can fill hard-to-fill positions. So typically we're talking about exceptional education position vacancies, looking at secondary science and math, really positions that it's been difficult for us to fill in terms of the current teacher shortage that we see around the country. We also bring in teachers who have at least 5 years or more of teaching experience. So we're not getting brand new teachers. We have those who have taught in their countries for at least 5 years, and also have meet the requirements to be able to get ADE certification when they arrive here into TUSD. Every year, once we get an idea of the budget, we're looking about February where we start to interview and make selections, issue offers to hire. And then it's really a rush to try to get them in. We try to target a 6-month process for recruiting and having them go through all the steps in their process to arrive here before the start of the school year. That's been a challenge. We have not always been able to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about what happens in that instance. But again, our target is to try to get them from the moment we know we can offer issue our hiring offers, to get them through the hoops and hurdles of their process so that they can hopefully arrive before the first day of school, participate in teacher induction, and so forth. So that's our goal. All I'll say here is that it hasn't always been consistent in terms of hiring international teachers. There have been up years and down years. What we've tried to do just recently is really understand that we have a shortage of teachers. We want to use international teacher recruitment as a tool to fill critical vacancies. And so we've communicated to Monica and the team, to Dr. Trujillo, that we really, for the next 2 to 5 years, need to really take a look and invest in international teacher recruitment, so that we know that every year this will be a resource for our district in filling positions. And we also need to build up that level of expertise and capacity to understand all the rules and processes to make it go smoothly each year. So here's where we were. School year 22-23, we brought in about 15 teachers. But then you'll see last school year and this school year, those numbers have jumped. So we brought in about 55 teachers this year and last school year. What's really notable is that about half of these international teachers who've come and joined us have filled really critical exceptional education vacancies. That's really helped us bring those vacant numbers down and provide the necessary education and services that we're required to provide to our students. And then you'll see others in various other grade levels and subject areas. So again, 55 teachers a year. We're planning to try to sustain those levels depending on the need. But those are a real increase over school year 22-23. And it's been an adjustment for us because we've never brought in as many in 1 year, and to do that twice in a row has really. We'll talk a little bit about learning, what these teachers need in terms of transition support to be able to succeed in our school district. Obviously, filling critical vacancies is a goal of ours. We also, most of them come in under the J1 visa, which is a cultural exchange. So when they come in, we are looking forward to them. Many of our teachers come from the Philippines, they come from India, but also other countries around the globe to share cross-cultural experiences within the classroom, for them to learn about our communities, but also to offer and add value to the students, families, and faculty and staff at their school sites. So here's for those who, there's a lot of details around the different visas that that are offered, but we're really focused on J1 visas. So J1 visas are issued for the purpose of cultural exchange. So these are teachers who basically they cover the costs of their sponsorship into the U.S. So they will find a sponsoring agency to help them obtain their visas. What our job is at TUSD is to determine if we're going to issue an offer to hire. Once they come in, our obligation to them really is to pay their salary and to offer them benefits. They actually field the rest of the cost for application to their sponsors, and they'll pay their sponsors for that opportunity. The J1 visas are typically a 3-year visa, extendable up to 5 years, and most of them will will be here for 5 years. The common expectation is that they return to their home country once they complete their J1 visa experience. The countries differ. Some are very stringent on that requirement. Some are not as stringent. So we find that some countries will ask them to come back right away, while others will allow them to stay longer if needed. Again, J1 visas are cultural exchange. The H1B visas, these are employer-sponsored visas. This is where we, as TUSD, have to decide whether to sponsor teachers under this visa. We do that on a case-by-case basis where we know that the teachers have worked with us, they've demonstrated their commitment to our schools, they've shown proficiency in the classroom in terms of teaching students. If we extend the H-1B visa sponsorship, that typically costs us just under $1,000 to help the teachers with their application fees, and that gets them their 3-year visa, and it's extendable up to 6 years under the H-1B visa. So there is a cost to TUSD to do that, but for $1,000 once every 3 years, having a teacher with us for those 6 years has really been a good return on investment. Teachers who seek permanent residency, there is a pathway for them to seek permanent residency through sponsorship by the district. Even at this point, we only have a handful who are in that permanent residency path, but these are teachers, again, who've demonstrated dedication, commitment to the district, and on a case-by-case basis, we can offer that sponsorship. At that point, it is about $2,500 per teacher to sponsor them in terms of their application and legal fees. And then, honestly, the permanent residency path takes a long time. I think it's about 7 to 9 years, depending on the country that you're from. It could go longer based on the backlog. But anyways, we've seen teachers who have come in and moved through these different visa pathways and seek permanent residency, and they stay in touch with us to seek support as much as possible in navigating this environment. But again, we're working to build the expertise and capacity to give them the proper guidance and advice. When we talk about retention strategies, really we're talking about making sure that when our teachers come, they feel supported and are able to transition into our community. So they come with experience, but they don't necessarily come with training in the American education system. So even if you come with special education background, the IEPs are a completely new area that requires training and professional development from our team. So we really focus on trying to help teachers figure out classroom management, be able to figure out technology to receive the supports they need. And so we work with our curriculum and instruction department, exceptional education department, to try to provide those opportunities. in order to help them transition and get off to a great start. Again, for many of the teachers who don't come in at the start of the school year, we've had to be creative. So for the last 2 years, we've offered a special international teacher induction that happens later, after a month or so after the school year starts, but we do our best to use that opportunity to welcome them and get them some basic guidelines and support to let them know where the resources are that they can access during their time with us. We're trying to do a better job just learning what their needs are. And again, we've worked with CNI, with XED, with multicultural curriculum, and also with our TEA partners to try to offer those supports to our teachers. I'll go ahead and this is basically where we're at right now. Based on what we've learned, international teachers are not just transitioning to our schools and classrooms, are coming into a whole new community. So we've actually got a working group together to think about what supports are needed to really build on what we've learned over the last couple of years. So our internationals come to us, when they arrive here, they've got to do a lot of things just to get ready to reside as members of our community. That means getting their social security numbers, getting phones, finding housing, transportation. We're working with their sponsors and working amongst ourselves to figure out what kinds of partnerships we can come up with to help them through those initial stages of their transition. Once they come in, we do an induction, but we're looking at more targeted professional development for our teachers and an ongoing professional development program that really targets their needs, helps them to network with each other, helps them to integrate into the community. These are things that are above and beyond what we normally do for teachers who are familiar with our district and our schools. It's been well received. I don't think we've heard a lot of good things from those teachers who've come in to finally feel like they've got some support in integrating into our schools. And then our school administrators, our union partners, and our departments have really invested in these teachers, knowing that they've come a long way to to teach in our schools. We see a lot of them just really happy to be here, really happy to learn about education in our system, and then really dedicated to doing the best job possible. So their future direction really is to come up with more supports, figure out ways to really structure those supports on an ongoing basis. And again, if we're lucky, they'll be here for the 5 years of their J1 visa, and if longer, even better for us. So with that, I'm going to thank you for allowing us to give you an update, and we're happy to take any questions.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Fernandez? All right. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, I do believe,
That concludes the superintendent's report.
okay, thank you, Dr. Trujillo. All right, we are now to call to the audience, and before we start, Luis is up front if you need interpretation services. Thank you, Luis. And now I will hand that over to Ms. Ekstrom.
Thank you. Public participation at board meetings. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience. The governing board clerk shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and for maintaining order where it may be appropriate. Those who speak in person or want to have their comments read shall email or call the board office or complete a request to address the board form before the meeting. Speakers who have not completed a request form are not permitted to address the board. The speaker must state their full name and topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time of 3 minutes. While more than one speaker may speak together in the time allowed, speakers are reminded that they are not allowed to speak more than once, and they may not transfer or delegate their time to others. If there are documents for the board, please give them to the board office staff, and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and/or speaking before the board shall observe rules of good conduct. Speakers shall also refrain from inappropriate or slanderous remarks. And because TUSD serves students from preschool through high school, speakers should also be aware there may be children present and listening. At the end of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if any board member wishes to respond to a criticism, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. No more than 2 members may address each topic. Contents of this card are public information. Our first speaker is Jimmy Wells.
Good evening. Let me just read this. Hi, my name is Jimmy Wells. I'm currently the preschool teacher at Maldonado Elementary School. I've been a preschool teacher there for the last 4 years, or this is starting my 4th year. And I've been a teacher for over 11 years, and most of that time I've spent teaching preschool and pre-K. It's an honor to spend my days teaching and learning and exploring alongside 3, 4, and 5-year-olds and their families. They truly have so much to share with the world. As a preschool teacher, I know the importance of preschool education for children and their families, which is why I'm here tonight. I'm asking the board and the district to consider putting forth an override and to consider including funding for preschool programs in TUSD in that override. I know the power that preschool can have in the lives of children and families that we work with. I was first inspired to become a preschool teacher after spending time with a veteran preschool teacher, Paula McFeeters, who's taught for many years at Ocella Elementary School. I saw the care and the interest that she took in the lives of her children and their families. I saw the respect that she had for the children and how they explored the world around them. I also saw the relationship she was able to build with the entire family of the children that she's in her class. It was clear to me then, as it is to me today, that preschool plays a vital role in the lives of children, families, and communities. Nowhere else in the school system can such organic relationships be built, and nowhere else in the school system can we respond to the needs of children and families in a way that sets the tone for the rest of their academic experience. The research backs it up. Study after study shows that preschool can have a profound impact on students as they move on to kindergarten and beyond. TUSD's own statistics show that the vast majority of preschool students move on to kindergarten and stay in TUSD schools. Last year, 87% of preschool students moving on to kindergarten stayed inside the district. Adding funding for preschool programs in TUSD through an override will continue that trend. It will enable us to expand and deepen the impact we are already having. In addition, override funding for preschools will attract a wide swath of supporters and voters. The same communities that supported the creation of the PEEPS program, for example, at the county level, will be attracted to and support a potential override in TUSD with early childhood funding included. Let's build on that legacy that the preschool programs in TUSD have already made and expand the resources we put into our classrooms. An override is a great way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Becca Yarnell.
Hi, I'm Becca Yarnell, and I've been a proud preschool teacher for the last 14 years. The last 2 have been with TUSD. During this time, many kindergarten teachers have shared that they can almost instantly tell when students were in preschool programs versus those that were just starting their kindergarten year. This is because in preschool programs, we present opportunities for all kinds of learning, including academic development, but also social and emotional learning, which is the foundation for all other learning. This is often the first time the child has ever routinely been away from their home structure and is learning independently from their grown-up. In TUSD's preschool programs, we are able to give the students and their caregivers tools to handle the separation so that when it is time for their child to attend kindergarten, they are both ready. We also support the child with social emotional development skills such as self-regulation, meaning they are able to sit during circle time and focus on reading comprehension or writing their name. This is the foundation for learning in higher grades. By having preschool available in our district, we are also able to have early intervention and seek support for students. Oh, sorry, I'm not tall enough. And that they can achieve goals and improve skills sooner. By attending preschool, children are also given the opportunity to get a head start academically. Children are exposed to letters, numbers, and building fine motor skills, and that will support them for the rest of their lives. While parents and caregivers are also always a child's first line of learning, preschool is the next valuable step to their future and their lifelong education. With this, I will end with encouraging you to vote yes for an override and yes to funding preschools for these benefits to continue for our future students. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Next is Lillian Fox.
President Luna Rose, members of the board and staff. I have homework for you again. I did this chart and it just shocked me. And I know how awful TUSD's performance is academically, but this shocked me. I was looking at the effect of poor feeder schools on the high schools. Every school that's highlighted in red here, their English language and math proficiency were below 19%. So fewer than 19% of their kids are proficient. That just shouldn't be. Not all, that's all these schools in red. There are 2 pages of them. The schools in green, the proficiency is over 50%. There are not very many of them. All of TUSD schools need to be over 50%. Every time Dr. Trujillo stands here and gives you happy talk, look up the school's test scores. Back here, I have 5 years of data on every single TUSD school, their proficiency, and also the resources they're getting, because one of the problems is TUSD under-resources the schools. The departments get gold-plated treatment. Lots of money gets spent on lots of things that aren't relevant to education in the schools. If you look at this chart shows that this year, 56.5% of all the district money is going to the departments. The schools are getting only 43.5. That shouldn't be. That's why I put the resources on here. You look at a school that has, say, let's look at my old high school, 11% proficiency in English, 6% proficiency in math. There's very little support in high schools to help kids who can't read. If you look up some of the schools that Dr. Trujillo talked about tonight and that teachers spoke about tonight, look and see what their proficiency is. But even more important, look and see if they have reading recovery teachers, if they have math recovery teachers, if they have the resources they need to help their students. And in many cases, they do not. TUSD punishes underperforming schools. If you're underperforming, you tend to lose students, so the first damn thing TUSD does is cut your budget. And so if you had money for resources, you don't have it after they're done with you. And you'll find that some of these schools that are terribly low performing, they don't have any reading recovery teachers, they don't have any math recovery teachers, and some schools haven't had money for their libraries in 5 years. No librarian either, probably a half-time library assistant. You need, as a board, to stay really focused on making sure the money goes to the schools, and the schools have the resources they need. There's no shame in a school having low performance numbers, but there's a real shame when they don't have the resources they need to help those schools. You need to look up Van Buskert and look up C.D. Rose and look at their performance scores and look at their
Thank you. Your time has
resources.
expired, Ms. Fox. Thank you. Next is Jerry Schuster.
Good evening, Board President Luna Rose, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Trujillo, Councilor Ross, and staff. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. And tonight, I just want to say a couple of brief things. First, I want to repeat what Board President Luna Rose had said earlier. I want to congratulate Board President Luna Rose, Board Member Dr. Ravi Shah, and Board Member Ms. Shah on your re-election. Again, congratulations, and I wish you all the very best. And I also want to say thank you to the board and to TUSD for setting aside the November 22nd as a day to recognize subs. And as a sub, I'm honored and most grateful for that. Thank you very much, and again, best wishes to all.
Thank you. Next, we have comments to be read, and this is from Margarita Villanueva, and this is about preschool funding. To whom it may concern, my name is Margarita Villanueva, and I have had the privilege of serving as a teacher in the Tucson Unified School District since August 2000. I've worked with the preschool department since 2004, and I currently teach at Ochoa Elementary. First and foremost, I want to express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to teach in this district. I truly love my job, and I feel fortunate to make a meaningful difference in the lives of the children I serve. I'm writing to you today with a heartfelt request. Please consider providing funding to support our preschool programs here at TUSD. In my professional opinion, preschool is one of the most important and impactful experiences a child can have before entering kindergarten, especially for children who are at risk. The growth and development that occur in the first 5 years of life are astounding, and by nurturing children during this critical time, we have the power to shape their future in profoundly positive ways. When I was earning my degree in education, I was fortunate enough to work as a nanny for an educated, well-to-do family. Their children were bright, curious, and excelled at school. As a Latina, I couldn't help but compare their experiences with those children I knew from similar communities to the ones I teach now. The key difference I saw was not intelligence or potential, but opportunity. The wealthier children had access to enriching experiences like family trips, museum visits, and activities that broadened their knowledge and helped them connect what they were learning to the world around them. These early experiences created a foundation of understanding that gave them a head start in life. That insight became a driving force for me as a teacher. I've made it my mission to provide my students with as many enriching educational experiences as possible, whether it's through the classroom activities or field trips. I've seen firsthand how preschool can be a transformative experience for children. I watch their eyes light up when they make connections to new learning, and I hear their pride when they share their experiences with the class. The joy and confidence they gain through these experiences not only enrich their lives, but also help them build a strong foundation for future success. Preschool truly is the great equalizer. In addition to providing rich learning experiences, perhaps the most important work we do in preschool is helping children build self-confidence. Kindergarten has become a high-stakes grade level, and children who face challenges early often continue to struggle throughout their academic journey. From my years of teaching, I've seen that children who enter kindergarten with a strong sense of confidence because they understand what is expected of them, have a smoother transition into socially and academically. These children are more prepared. And then, Yolanda, you can send this to the rest of my colleagues so they can read the rest of the comments. And that concludes the call to the audience.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ekstrom. All right, board members, would you like to make any comments? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who spoke tonight. I'd like to ask staff to review the requests from the public on the potential of doing an override to fund pre-K.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much for those who spoke this evening. All right, so now we are on to consent agenda. Approval of consent agenda items 5.2 through 5.17. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, President Luna Rose, members of the board, the administration recommends governing board consideration and approval of those consent agenda items as arranged 5.2 all the way to 5.17.
President Luna Rose?
Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Can we pull item 5.4?
Okay. Board members, any objections? No? Okay, so we'll do the vote. Ms. Barboa, could we do 5.2, 5.3, and then 5.
Point of order, we need a motion to accept the other ones.
Yes.
So I'll move the other items except for 5.4.
Okay. That's much quicker than me reading all of them. Thank you. And I will second. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, ayes have it. So now we are on to 5.4, approval of an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between Tucson Unified, Hollinger K-8, CE Rose Pre-K-8, and Wakefield Middle School, and Pima County Community College for the implementation of the U.S. Department of Education TRIO Talent Search Grant. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you for pulling this item. I just have a few questions regarding the program. So I noticed that the schools that are identified are middle schools and K-8s. Some of the services offered are, resumes, career services, FAFSA, things of that nature. So I'm just curious, are students is this a program that lasts for years? How are the students identified? Are they selected by staff, or is this something that students elect to do? Thanks.
No, it's a great question. So I think we have with us Edgar Soto, welcome, from Pima Community College. And we also have Don Harp, who is here as program manager for the TRIO program. So if you gentlemen would like to address the question, that'd be great.
President Natalie Luna Rose, members of the board, superintendent, thank you for allowing us to speak a little bit on this, because this is unique. Usually this is at the high school level, but we'll get into why we're doing this. I just want to confirm that Dr. Trujillo was at every event he talked about, because I think I was at the same events that he was at. So this is an amazing partnership. Anything that we do, I think if we can work together, and this fills the gaps. I'm probably preaching to the choir how important these grants are, and as soon as the younger we can get access to the students and give them these pathways and exposure to events, information, and people, it's going to really help. But yes, we are now 7th, 8th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th. I'm going to let our director and program manager, Don Harp, kind of give the justification and reasoning why we're doing this. And then I think you'll be able to see why this is a really great opportunity.
Board Member Shaw, thank you so much for your questions about our program. We currently serve Pueblo High School, and so most of those services are obviously geared towards high school students. And I just listed those on the slide so that you knew that the comprehensive services that we provide. Obviously, we would tailor our services more specifically to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders getting ready for high school. But planting that seed for post-graduation planning, whether it be post-secondary education or certificate programs or career services. How the children are selected is generally we work with the parents because they're minors, and so we show up recruitment days on campus, preferably when parents are around, and it's often it's a collaboration between the student, the parent, and the team. Right now, because we're not fully funded to serve, we're funded to serve 965 students, and we have about 770 right now. It's kind of a first come, first served basis. Once our program is full, we do have some metrics that we use. We employ like GPA. That is currently waived post-pandemic because we have so many students that we serve that are in credit remediation classes, and we don't want to exclude the people who need our services most. I don't remember all your questions. Did I cover most of them? Do you have any more?
Yeah, so basically, like some of these things that are more for high school students just won't be offered, or they'll be talked about. And then the student events, those are something that the new students at the middle school level will be able to participate in?
Absolutely. Our overnights, out-of-state trips to colleges in, for example, I'll just give an example. In late May, early June, our team took the students to San Diego. We visited 3 universities. We also went to museums, the beach, and we had a lot of fun too. So it's not purely academic. We like to mix it up to let them have some fun too, especially because they're minors and they have a lot of energy. So they wouldn't be taken, the 6th, 7th, 8th graders, we wouldn't be taking them on overnights. We would be doing lots of day trips. And that could be Kitt Peak, Karchner Caverns, that could be the U of A, with parents' permission forms filled out prior to every event. ASU, NAU's a little too far. We go overnight to NAU, but we can go as far as Phoenix and back and visit programs, their academic programs and museums, art galleries. One of the most popular events we just did recently was we went to the Coco musical at the U of A Centennial Hall, where the Orquesta Nacional de Mexico was playing live as the movie was shown. And all those local events is what we'd want to bring the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to. And again, planting the seeds early to get them prepped for high school so that they're ready to go as first day of freshman year. I've always believed in reaching out to younger students. I never felt that 9th graders were young enough for us to reach out to. We have a STEM focus and a career services focus. And ideally, the younger that we can reach a student, the better, to kind of help prep them for high school so they do as well in high school as they can, to line them up for scholarships if it's post-secondary education that they desire to pursue after they graduate, or to get them lined up with the career services they need so they can start in the workforce after graduation as well poised as possible.
Great, that's really exciting. And did you say that all of these, like the events, are funded by your organization, or do the parents have to come out of pocket for some of it?
There is absolutely no cost to the students or their parents. It's a federally funded Department of Education grant. So the food is covered, admissions, transportation, the hotels are covered. Wow. When we have workshops, all the supplies and materials are covered. It doesn't cost the kids 1 penny or their families 1 penny, although they sometimes are sent by their parents with some pocket change because we can't buy souvenirs and so forth. Like one of the most popular things when we go to the universities, everyone wants to go to the bookstore and buy some swag from their favorite university. That's not something we can cover, but everything else is covered under the grant.
Okay, great. Well, I know that this is going to be really impactful for all the students that you serve. I hope we can, expand it one day. When I was in 5th grade, I was able to participate in the Fabulous 5th Graders program, and we went over to Pima downtown, and it really put college on my mind. And so I don't know if we're doing that in our district, but I think, maybe we should look into doing some field trips at the elementary school level over to Pima, because it's such a huge resource for our community. So thank you for both of you for what you do.
Thank you, Board Member Shaw.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll move the item.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. So item moved by Ms. Shaw, seconded by Dr. Shaw. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the partnership. Thank you. All right, we are on to action item 6.1, approval to procure goods and services for Q3 bond project priorities. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, governing board members, I'd like to welcome to the podium our bond manager, Dr. Charlotte Carter, along with our project manager, Mr. Damon Ballesteros. We're excited because our Bond Oversight Committee did recommend governing board approval of our Q3 bond projects in 3 major categories. So here to walk us through is Dr. Carter.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. As you know, my name is Dr. Charlotte Carter, and I am here to discuss item 6.1, the approval to procure goods and services for Q3 bond projects and priorities. And by the way, good evening, board, president, and members. I meant to say that. So the Bond Oversight Committee did approve 3 major areas and 3 major projects for Q3. That is health, security, and safety, the security gates and fencing, with about $5.5 million, improvements to classroom and learning spaces, the career tech education automotive equipment program upgrade for 2 high schools, and also transportation, 24 safety vehicles. So this evening, I would like to, if you have any questions about it, but what we would want to do is motion to grant authority to the purchasing director in conjunction with the bond program manager to procure goods and services using TUSD and cooperative contracts for the 3rd wave of bond projects, not to exceed $7.4 million, with a 20% contingency where single purchases may exceed $250,000, or for a cumulative purchase with cooperative contract vendors in excess of $250,000. So I do want to say this is not all of the Q3 projects. What I was wanting to do is, as we get them approved, bring them before you so we can start the purchasing. The other big component of this for Q3 is to make sure that with the various projects that there's no interruption with classrooms. So I'm trying to get them through, make sure that we have plenty of time for purchasing, and also considering that some of the times there could be supply chain issues. So we are here with these three. Is there any questions that you might have?
Board members, questions? Ms. Ekstrom.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Carter. I had questions on the security fencing. I know Henry has been waiting quite a long time for that security fencing to come in, as has Leonard-Keithys. Do we have a date when those projects would start?
What were the two schools that you were inquiring about?
Henry and Leonard-Keithys.
And Leonard-Keithys. Okay, so what we're predicting, these are estimates, because each one of the fencings, we need to do a full assessment and determine what that's going to look like. But what our idea was is, there is a list of 32 schools that are high priority for security gates and fencing. We were going to do, for the third quarter, 16, and then for the second quarter, 16. That's the way we had it divided up. However, for Q2, we already had 6 of them. So as you know, Sabino, Project Moore, Miles, Ford, Keelan, and Sam Hughes are already in Q2. So taking that off the list, then that's I believe 20, I had it on here, the 27. So I would say, and this is just estimates at this point, that Henry's going to be in that first wave for Q3. Okay, if we're doing up to 16, Henry is 14, of which we'll have done 6 of those in the first 16. The second one that you mentioned was Leonard-Keithys, right? Mm-hmm. I'm still struggling with that word, but forgive me. That is number 21 on the list. Okay. So more than likely that'd be Q4. As we talked last time, I know Mr. Romero had mentioned, is there any leeway to move some up or down? That's definitely a possibility, but I will say that the security and safety team did these various walkthroughs and assessments, and this was their ordering of it.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Romero?
So just kind of going over these estimates, most everyone looks like they're like around 200,000. There's some that are more, I know like Catalina High, it also talks about, exterior gate, different things like that. Mm-hmm. So are these just kind of ballpark estimates on these, but we will not use all the money, or we'll use all the money, or basically we'll get adjusted? I'm just, because the consistency of it, other than just a couple schools, it goes up and or maintains the same.
Great question. These are estimates. So as you know, at the time we had estimates from a while back. So the idea is we have 2 people assigned. One is the safety person, and then we have our projects person. They're going to each site and do an assessment, working with the vendor, and then we determine what the scope of work is going to look like. And so, as you had mentioned from the last time with Project Moore, I actually did attend and go to their assessment so I can see the process and how we're doing it. And we're also involving the principal as well, so if they see any places that need to be strengthening, that also gets to be considered. So at this point, these are estimates, but we'll get actual quotes from the vendor after we do the walkthroughs.
Fantastic. So then, like on the ones that we have done that, we have access to those numbers already. Is that correct for the schools that have been finished?
So right now, Mr. Romero, we have 3 quotes already. We have the one from, and this is Q2, because you know we're in Q2 right now. The ones that we currently do have, of course, we have Sam Hughes, because we're actually doing the work at Sam Hughes. We also have Ford and Keylon. So right now, and I just got off the press talking to the person that's doing that from the project side. We are still waiting on the quote from Project Moore. So when I did that walkthrough about 2 weeks ago, we're waiting on the vendor to get that quote. And he said that it may be tomorrow or Friday. And then we still need to get miles. I also did that walkthrough as well. So those are coming in, but we don't have all of the security gates and fencing. We will, after this is, approved for Q3, then we'll start that process for Q3.
Okay. And just one thing that you mentioned, that you're having the principals be involved, and that's very encouraging, because I know they know their campuses the best. So I'm glad to hear that you're keeping them involved also. Thanks.
Did I miss anything, Joe?
Dr. Trujillo?
Dr. Carter, this might even be Mr. Hallams, or it might even be Damon, may even be both. To what extent are we doing wrought iron versus chain link? So if you can speak very broadly, more for our community that's watching, because I think in my appearances, I've met a lot of parents that they're either under the belief that the entirety of the school is going to be wrought iron, or the entirety is going to be chain link. So how are we determining the balance between chain link and wrought iron? And then to Mr. Romero's, board member Romero's point, to what extent is their principal voice involved in terms of specific preferences on a campus that might be wrought iron versus chain link?
Sure, and thank you for the question to Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, President Luna Rose, governing board members. Yeah, and we worked really closely with the bond oversight, the bond committee, and it really established that approach to how we're going to go forward in evaluating those schools on a case-by-case basis. So there's really no blanket. As we know, throughout our district, we have a lot of very unique schools and a lot of very unique areas with unique threats. So that's what we're kind of doing in the evaluation process. And what we want to do is we want to have some consistency in how our schools look. So the front-facing side of our schools is really where we're focusing on the wrought iron. Other areas, if it's next to a busy thoroughfare, a park, somewhere we've had historical issues, we'll look to kind of integrate wrought iron to those areas. But if they back commercial areas or so on and so forth, where it's not as visually necessary, or even just necessary for others various reasons, then we'll apply chain link. And the purpose and the reason for that is really a cost, right? If we had the funding to do wrought iron around all of our entire campuses, all 87 sites, that would be our preference. But the reality is we'd probably go through much of our bond if we did that. So we're trying to be effective in what we're trying to accomplish and making sure that our sites are safer, but also trying to be efficient with the funding that we're utilizing.
I had a question. How long does it take to put, and maybe this is more Mr. Ballestero's question, how long does it take to put fencing around a school?
Yes, good evening, President Luna, Governing Board, Dr. Trujillo. So each site is pretty much independent of its own, because there's, as Joe mentioned, each site has its challenges. So depending on, utilities, the actual duration around, how easy it is to construct. So it's really hard to say it takes 2, 3, 4 weeks, because each site is independent and they each pose their own challenges during construction. And the biggest challenge that we're seeing is, utilities coming in and how we go around those utilities. Sam Hughes, presented an issue with, certain vegetation around it. So again, each site is unique. So it's very difficult to say each site would take X amount of time, because each site provides its own unique challenges.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any other questions for Dr. Carter? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. Let's see. Do we ever, install privacy netting around a chain link fence to kind of obscure the school from the general public. I was driving by a school that was right next to a bus stop, and I just kind of paused because someone was like looking into the school. There was a bunch of kids right by the fence, and I was just kind of alarmed. And so, have we ever considered that?
Good evening. Yes. No, we haven't. The only area where we do provide like a security netting, it's really not netting, it's actually like a grid, is on the interior doors where we have access control. And it's, with the ADA push bar compliance, those areas all have that netting so that people can't reach in and open the door. So those are the only areas that are identified in our standard specification for that type of application.
Okay, but it's something that is a possibility if there is ever an issue, I imagine.
So we haven't looked at it. We try to follow the Arizona Department of Education's guidelines, and they provide the guidelines on height of fencing, the type of fencing. So nowhere in their design spec do they call for a type of screening that we've seen.
Mr. Helms, have you ever encountered an issue?
If you wouldn't mind adding me to something, and thank you, Damon. The problem with that is we live in the Arizona sun, and most of that's not very effective for long periods of time. So we might be able to make a pretty significant investment in doing that in some of those areas you're referring to. The reality is it wouldn't last very long. So then it would just become a maintenance, I'll be honest, kind of a maintenance problem going forward and being able to maintain that because of the conditions that we live in Tucson.
Okay, thank you.
All right, board, any further comment? Okay, I would like to move the item.
Second.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Ms. Ekstrom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Dr. Carter.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, item 6.2, recommendation to appoint a new member to serve on the Tucson Unified School District Employee Benefits Trust Committee, and approval to accept the resignation of an Employee Benefits Committee member. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Luna Rose, members of the governing board. Tonight, we're addressing two personnel happenings, if you will, in the Employee Benefits Trust Board. First, we want to say thank you and farewell to Renee Heuser, who will be leaving the Employee Benefits Trust Board after many, many years of service in support of the committee. So we certainly want to thank her for the time and the energy she's rendered to the committee. And at the same time, recommending Mr. Alan Davila for membership into the Employee Benefits Trust Board. Mr. Davila currently serves as a senior manager for procurement for Raytheon Technologies and is interested in the role.
Thank you. As liaison to the committee, Dr. Shaw, is there anything you wanted to add?
Just that this was approved by the Employees Benefits Trust at its last meeting on Monday, November 4th, an unanimous decision to recommend this appointment to the governing board.
Okay. Would you like to move the item?
I'll move the item.
Okay, I will second. So moved by Dr. Shaw, seconded by myself. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Thank you very much.
And can I say
Yes,
finally, this
please.
Ms. Heuser, to thank you for all your years of service. She was our lead for human resources here in the district, and I'm glad she was able to stay on for a number of years after she left that position to continue serving our district and the Employees Benefits Trust. So thank you, Ms. Heuser, for all of your years of service to our district.
Do we have Mr. Davila either online or here? Just checking. Okay, I don't want to leave anybody out who attended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we are on to 6.3, consideration of the 2025 Tucson Unified School District Governing Board meeting calendar.
Yes, as our incumbents are back with us, we wanted to go ahead and get the calendar in front of you. I'm going to turn it over to Yolanda, and she'll briefly take you through the months. This is a time, any scheduling conflicts, any challenges, any preferences that you would like noted. This is the opportunity to do that so we can revise and hopefully get a calendar. Please note that for those of you watching in the public, this is not the district calendar, of course. This is just for governing board meetings occurring in 2025. Mrs. Borboa.
Good evening, governing board members. So we'll go ahead and start with January. We're going to start on, I have scheduled for the 14th, and we'll do the organizational meeting at the same time as the regular board meeting. So we'll do the organizational part of the meeting at the beginning, right after call to the order, and then we'll go into our regular business for that meeting. And then I have scheduled for the 28th as the special board meeting. Go into February? Yes.
Just as a point of clarification, so the reorganization meeting on the 14th is going to happen at the top of the regular meeting agenda, and it's also going to be inclusive of the public swearing in, right,
Yes.
of the new, okay?
Yes.
And then on that agenda will also be the board's annual re-examination of their assignment of liaisons to appointed committees.
Correct. That'll be on there as well.
Okay.
And then for February, I have scheduled.
Dr. Shaw?
So
sorry.
usually we have that as a separate meeting. Was there a reason that we combined it this year or for next year?
We did it last year as well.
We did, okay.
Is it the state statute that has now allowed the turnover of?
Mr. Ross?
Good evening, board members. Well, the statute changed a couple years ago to have more flexibility in when you have the meeting. It used to be, I think, the first or second Tuesday of the
first Tuesday.
Now you have the entire month, and last year, as Ms. Borboa said, the board did combine the organizational functions with actual business.
Okay. Any objection to that? No? Okay.
Okay, so February, we have scheduled the 11th for the regular board meeting, and then the 25th for your special board meeting. And then for March, I have 2 dates highlighted for the regular board meeting, the first Tuesday and then the 18th. And then your special board meeting for the 25th. So I just wasn't sure what you would like for your regular board meeting for that first meeting of the month.
Val. I'm sorry, Mr. Romero.
Yeah, I would request the 4th.
The 4th?
Probably easy for staff to get the materials ready as well, I would imagine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Then for April, I have the 15th and then the 29th. For May, we have the regular on the 13th and then the special meeting on the 27th. For June, we have the regular meeting on the 10th and then the special meeting on the 24th. July, I have for both meetings, for the regular meeting, the 8th or the 15th. We do have to have the adoption and public hearing for fiscal 2026 budget and desegregation budget on or before the 15th. So it would have to be one of those 2 dates for the regular meeting.
I would like to recommend the 15th just in case people are still on 4th of July vacation for the regular board meeting.
What was the thing that had to be on or what was the thing that had to be on or before
It's the adoption and the public hearing for the fiscal 26 budget and desegregation budget.
By the 15th, you said?
By the 15th.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense in terms of staff time, and because the whole office is closed the week of the 4th, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so that would be impossible to have an 8th meeting then, probably.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the special board meeting, the 22nd or the 29th?
The 29th, Ms. Shaw.
Oh, I'd prefer the 22nd to the 29th.
Is there anything that, deadlines that we have to meet either of those dates?
No.
Okay. I'm fine with the 22nd. Okay.
Taking into August, the regular board meeting on the 12th and the special on the 26th. The September, I have scheduled the regular on the 9th and then the special on the 16th. Jewish holiday.
Okay.
The October one, I have the regular meeting on the 14th and then the special meeting on the 28th. And for October, we do need to have the approval of the fiscal 2025 annual financial report no later than October 15th. So it would have to be, I think the tentative schedule for fall break is the week of the 6th, so we wouldn't be able to do it during that week, so.
Okay.
And then the 28th would be the special meeting on November, and the regular board meeting on the 18th, and that would be the only meeting for November. And then December, the regular meeting on the 9th, and that would be the only meeting for that month.
Alrighty. Ms. Shaw, anybody, any objections? Okay. I do think we need to move the item, so I will move the item.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by myself, second by Dr. Shaw. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Barboa. I know that was exciting. Okay. All right. We are now on to 7.1, Governing Board Policy JFB, Open Enrollment and School Choice Revision, first reading. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, governing board members, I'd like to welcome Associate General Counsel Michael Aronoff, walk us through tonight's first read on some proposed adjustments to our open enrollment and school choice policy. Mr. Aronoff?
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Two kind of main changes that are included in this. Jean, maybe if we could scroll down a little bit further. Yeah, right there. So the first of the changes is a change to language that is not actually going to change our practice. What it is going to do, it is going to make, hopefully, our practices clearer to members of the public who might be reading this policy to understand what we're doing. And the language has to do with capacity. We talk about admitting students when we have capacity to admit them. And we have had instances where there's confusion over sort of what capacity means. There's capacity at a school in that there might be seats open in second grade, but the student wants to come in fifth grade and there's no capacity in that grade. Really, the bigger question comes up when we have particular programs. We have limits on how many students are in a particular program at a school. And so while the school may have seats available, that program does not. And so we wouldn't open enroll students into that program because there's not capacity there. So we've tried in this particular part of the language update to clarify what we're talking about when we talk about capacity at schools in the context of open enrollment. So not a change in our practice, but a change in the language to try to make it clearer to those looking at it exactly what we're doing and how we evaluate it. And then if we could scroll down to the other piece of this, right there, we have the other change to this policy, which comes with a recent state statute, which makes it permissible. It doesn't require us to do this, but it allows us to give enrollment priority to children of members of the armed forces who are either in active duty or who were killed in the line of duty. And so we have offered this as a proposed change in the policy now that it is part of the statute as something that we can do. There was a PIA that was done on this. It was posted quite a while ago. This agenda item was originally on for the October special meeting, and the PIA was posted a week or so before that. So that we did do a PIA that's been posted for a while, and just to kind of summarize, the PIA doesn't find that there's going to be any significant impact from this change on our enrollment numbers because the numbers of students who qualify are so low and we don't anticipate a lot of movement. But for those small numbers of families who might qualify, might be impacted by this could be a big boost. It could boost our appeal as a district to military families. And so we have included that as part of the proposed changes for the policy. This is before you for a first read today. I want to talk a little bit about the timeline that we have. As I said, this was originally in front of you or on the agenda for the October 28th meeting. and it got bumped to today. We had hoped that we'd put it on the October calendar with the idea of coming back in December because the lottery gets run in January. The first running of the lottery is January 21st. So we could post it for the full 30 days, come back at the January 14th meeting and have a decision on that. It is probably, that's maybe a little tight, but it's potentially doable. But I want to offer as an alternative, the board could have a slightly abridged comment period. It would be 3 weeks if the board wanted to bring it back for a second read on December 10th at the December 10th meeting. So I offer that as a possibility so that we can make sure that we have some finality on that before the administration has to prepare for and run the first lottery in January.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arenal. Board members' questions. Mr. Romero.
Just a quick question. I was looking at the revised. So the last time we revised this was just like January 21st, 2023. Do we know, I guess before that it was, 2015, so it's quite a few years before. Were there big changes done between November and January 23? Do you recall?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look to see what we revised. Do you remember? You're going to look? Okay.
So can you repeat, so you want to have like a shortened period?
I want to offer that as a possibility, simply so that we're not butting right up against the running of the lottery, because the change related to military families is going to impact how the lottery gets run, and so I want to make sure that that's able to be factored in. So it would be less than the regular 30-day period. Certainly the board could choose to simply do the 30-day period and bring it back in January, but I wanted to put that out there as a possibility for your consideration to avoid that crunch towards January 21st.
Okay. So if we were to approve this tonight with the shortened timeline, what would 15-day, 20-day?
So the proposal would be to bring it back at the December 10th meeting,
okay.
So it's 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay. So 21 days-ish, okay. I am okay with that. I don't know if that way we can get as many families as possible and to help out our schools. Dr. Shaw, did you have a question?
No, I'll move the item for first read approval with coming back to second read on December 10th.
Okay. I will second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Aronoff.
Thank you.
All right, we are on 8.1, desegregation budget planning for fiscal year 26. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, President Luna Rose, members of the board, our commitment to presenting the board and the public with a completely balanced desegregation budget, free of any deficits, gaps between expenditures and available revenue, clean and balanced for FY26, the 25-26 school year. That all starts today. So we want to present to you and the public the timeline for which we're going to carry out this work. And our plans for public engagement and transparency throughout the process. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ricky Hernandez.
Good evening, board members. So as Dr. Trujillo mentioned, we've only been 3 months into fiscal year 25. We got to start talking about fiscal year 26. So we need to talk about DSEC budget planning. So I'll go over kind of the status of where we are today and then talk about what our proposed planning process will be in terms of developing the DSEC budget for the next school year. So here's kind of current status of where we stand as of November 6th when these numbers were put together. So you adopted a budget as usual of $63.7 million. Currently, we have an estimated expenditures and encumbrances through the end of the current fiscal year totaling just over $65.6 million, which puts us at a deficit of just under $2 million. So we are currently already over budget based on current expenditures and encumbrances that are accounted for across the multiple activities and the multiple departments in the district. However, when you look at the projection, when we actually take a look at what people are actually going to spend, because our encumbrances don't necessarily account for everything people are going to spend, because we don't encumber everything. So, for example, if there are temp hourly wages for people who are paid added duty for whatever reason throughout the year, or if there are stipends that get paid out by HR, for example, they only get paid out on a specific time. We don't encumber those. We do budget for them, so we know that they're coming. Right now, the projected expenditure is just over $68.6 million, which would put our deficit at just shy of $5 million. Certainly, we are working to whittle this down. That's our strategy right now, is to continue to bring this and hopefully stick to that $2 million, as close to it as possible. But this is the current projection that we're expecting to move on. As I've kind of talked to you in the past, we've had this expenditure issue in the past. In fiscal year 23, we spent over $66.3 million. Last year, we spent just over $67.6 million. Right now, we're looking at another $1 million, about $68.6. In each one of those years, we did have to move expenses out of DSEG and put it into just regular M&O, which ultimately what that means is that our budget balance carry forward is just impacted. We're just not taking money forward because we're having to essentially balance DSEG. We cannot overspend the $63.7 million. So any of those deficits, ultimately, even though those expenditures did happen, we did end up with a balanced budget because we ended up having to absorb those expenditures in other parts of the district's budget. Now, just taking a look at what are the top 5 departments and their 3-year activity, language acquisition, transportation, magnet, GATE, and advanced learning experiences, or ALE, in that order, from 1 to 5. You can see what their budgets were on the left in the blue boxes, and what they actually spent or are projected to spend in fiscal year 25 in the orange boxes. Those numbers highlighted in green represent those departments and those fiscal years where they had over expenditures. So, for example, language acquisition in each of the last 2 fiscal years has over expended their budget. Language acquisition in 23 by $200,000, but in 24 by nearly $5 million. So we definitely have a pattern in some departments where there are over expenditures taking place. In some instances, it is outside of the control of the department, as I'll talk about in the next slide. But in some instances, it is within the control of the department to try to mitigate it. And unfortunately, it's not happening at the department level. Now, some of the biggest factors obviously affecting DSEG spending, the number one culprit, I guess you can call it, is salary and wage increases. That's really where we're taking the hit. Obviously, staffing across the district is the vast majority of the expenditures of the outlays in our budget. Desegregation is no different. Increases in the supplemental base. Every time that the board approved a supplemental base increase, we may fund, the classroom site fund for other teachers, but DSEG and Title I have to fund supplemental base increases out of DSEG and Title I. So even though we have classroom site fund, these teachers or these staff do not have the benefit of the classroom site fund funding their supplemental base. They still get it, but DSEG has to account for it in the case of the teachers who are funded out of DSEG. Benefit costs obviously continue to be part of it. We have not passed on any increases to staff. We've either absorbed them through the benefits trust or we've absorbed them through our own budgeting process. And so that obviously becomes an added expense to wherever individuals are paid from. State retirement has had very slight increases. Fortunately, they've been very minute, but there's still expenses where we have to account for. And there have been increased costs for instructional aides. Fiscal year 24, we took a little bit of a dive. It's been kind of flat, but we have seen the cost of materials obviously go up like any of the other items. But you can see certified salaries have jumped over 5% in 2 years. Classified salaries have jumped double digits percentage-wise in the same period. As we've talked about before, the biggest grouping in the classified salaries are bus drivers. That's where the biggest increases have happened. and therefore the biggest expense. But these are salary and wage increases. Staffing is definitely going to continue to be the biggest expense. So what are we taking a look at in terms of a proposed budgeting process? Is I've kind of worked through, what will really kind of make the rubber meet the road, because we need to start making some difficult decisions. Right now, out of the DSEG budget, only less than $2 million is capital. So because we're spending more on people in particular, we're spending less on investing in things that those departments need to function, including infrastructure or including instructional aids, things that we cannot buy with M&O in particular. So this is kind of the proposal at this point. So some people may have heard about this, but I've recommended to Dr. Trujillo the implementation of a zero-based budgeting approach to desegregation funding. So the idea behind this is that this will allocate funding based on efficiency and necessity versus incremental budgeting. Our general budgeting approach is across the district, but particularly with DSEG, has been to take an incremental budget approach. You get X in one year, and what are just the increases that I need? Salaries are going to go up 1%, benefits need to go up X, and I'm going to have so on and so forth. But our departments have not been really about, the whack-a-mole. Okay, if we're going to increase salaries over here, something's got to give down here. And that really hasn't happened. It will require managers to build a budget from the ground up. Everybody starts from zero. That doesn't mean you don't get anything, but the approach is literally zero-based. Everybody's got to start from the same level. The idea is that you focus on an actual examination of your expenditures line item by line item. Nothing is a sacred cow in your budget. It cannot be. It also requires a development of 3 budget categories. So you will be presented with 3 different packages. A base package. This is the bare minimum. This is exactly what we need to be compliant with the USP, with the activities that we need to function. A current service level, right, which is basically incremental, where we are now and what are the added expenses we need to focus on going into the next year, and even an enhanced budget package, because we need to take a look at kind of what are the potential to expand on certain components and expand on certain activities so that we can draw some comparisons. But every budget package is going to require performance measures for each one of them to determine the impact on service levels. We need to know why it is that you're going to do and what is that needle going to move towards, right? Whether it's incremental or it's, we're trying to get from A to B in 1 year, whatever that approach may be, we're leaving that up to the department to decide. It will require greater input from department team members and not just directors. Directors have generally been the leaders in crafting their budget packages to finance, which is fine. But we know that they've got experienced individuals on their teams who could have different approaches that might be more efficient, more cost effective, or might decide we need to stop doing this because we do this now, or whatever the case may be. Again, this is going to be put back on the department to make that decision. Now, there are obviously some advantages and some challenges to this approach. One of the biggest advantages is that it will start to look at inefficient expenses that need to be identified and potentially discontinued, so that we can be better about reducing outlays a little bit more efficiently. It's going to create more involvement amongst the community within the departments, right? This isn't a finance, we're not going to do this for them. We're going to put this on the departments. We're going to give them training and information that they need to build their budgets, but ultimately we are empowering those departments to make those decisions. And it does allow the finance department to just have greater knowledge and understanding of the patterns of expenses, right? We are not the subject matter experts for every single department, but it would be good for us to understand why certain things happen at the department level. Now, on the flip side, it will make the budget process, this makes the budget process a little bit more rigid. So sometimes the flexibility for unforeseen expenses can be harder to adopt. But we're already encountering that now. When there are things coming out of left field at a department, because we're running a deficit, it's very difficult for us to accommodate those kind of out of left field unknowns because we're already over budget. And so then we're having to look at another funding source in order to accommodate that request. It might become overwhelming based on the time commitment. Obviously, we're going to get this started here pretty quick. Our budgeting season for us will start in January in earnest with schools and departments in general. So there will be, a lot of demand on the departments and my department as well to invest quite a bit of time in the development of these. And also, there's always the risk of, ranking the wants versus the needs, right? This is ultimately it's a subjective process. It is developed by humans who have biases, and so these individuals are going to have to figure out a way to kind of remove these biases to really take a look at the greater good, because ultimately we need a balanced budget, and we really need to resolve this. We're trying to avoid having to do this as a top down, but more as an up from the bottom up. What does that mean? What is the approach? So the approach is this: you start with your goals, assess what your needs are for the upcoming year. Don't just kind of take what we've given you and then just add or subtract. Take a look at your actual need and what your actual goals are. You have a USP, there's a district strategic plan. Some departments have their own strategic plans as well. Use those as a formative assessment to decide, what do I need to accomplish? Identify those programs, identify those costs to actually meet the needs, and develop those budgets based on those priorities. In those first 3 phases, you can always abandon goals, programs, adjust as necessary. If you start kind of moving through the process and discover that there are things that need to be left behind, then it gives you the opportunity to do that, so that when you get to the point of here's our package, there aren't holes being poked into it. We want people to actually feel empowered that they've made a really good decision on the package. And it will, and review all of the expenses, including all your needs. We want you to take a look at the historical information, and we want to take a look at what's coming up. So what are the next steps? Because obviously this isn't going to happen instantly. It's not going to be easy. And so the very first step is going to have to be to train staff on the process. So actually give them training, actually provide them what are the step-by-step process, provide them templates for fiscal year 26 to let them know this is what it looks like. Give them the information that they need in order to start building their budgets, and we will meet with those DSEC funded departments to review budget requests. We will ask for community feedback. There will be 2 to 3 public forums in the spring to present what are the recommended packages by the departments, not by finance, but by the departments. What is it that they're looking for? And we want that public feedback so that we can incorporate it into those budgets, revise those budgets, and begin a draft of our performance impact analysis. Ultimately, we will need to do a PIA, hold public governing board meetings in the late spring, early summer around this budget, and review those budgets with you so that we can incorporate your feedback as well. Obviously, we will inform you as we go along the way, but in terms of a formal hearing, it would be a May-June timeframe, along with reviewing the PIA. We would revise those budgets, that PIA, and present ultimately a budget for adoption in July of 2025. So it's a multifaceted approach. It's going to require a lot of work, but ultimately, as Dr. Trujillo mentioned, our goal is to achieve a balanced DSEG budget by rethinking every single dollar that we put into the programs and activities of the DSEG funded departments. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for the presentation. Board members, do you have questions? Ms. Shaw.
Thanks for the presentation. So I guess before we send out the budget template to the DSEG departments, are we not going to maybe ask the board or look into it, like what we can move around currently so that our DSEG departments don't have to consider what to keep and what to let go. I know we just moved the RTI positions, which was 4.3 million into DSEG, which is very close to the what we will be over in fiscal year 25. So I'm just wondering if can we jump ahead of this issue, kind of move some things around. I know we were discussing moving some of the costs out of transportation and DSEG to some other funding source. Wouldn't that be a quicker way to do it without putting the burden and the stress on our DSEG departments to try to get into a number so we won't be over?
So the one thing I will say is that projection number already incorporates the move the bus drivers. So the bus drivers, the transportation piece, unless we change the 80-20 split that you've already approved, that 80-20 split is already reflected in there. Now, yeah, the $4 million that we moved in the RTA positions, or RTI positions rather, are in there. That certainly is part of it, but we are $5 million over. If we move $4 million, it's not moving. It literally is eliminating that expense. Those teachers, those positions would have to be gone in order for those positions to then go back into the pool, and those teachers then would have to go through the process of finding those jobs. It's not necessarily about shifting. We have nowhere to shift to. Shifting has to be very minimal, but there really is nowhere for some of these things to live. I don't disagree with the concept, though, of getting feedback from the board if there are components that you feel that we could start identifying and provide that information. Ultimately, we want to put this on our departments as part of the overall budgeting process to determine what it is that they need to decide what to keep or what not to keep. Because those questions, with all due respect, Mashad, those questions are not being asked by our departments. They're not saying, oh, I don't need this. That's a question that's not being asked. We ask that, but ultimately as the finance department, we, if they say, oh, but I need an extra, coordinator, teacher, whatever. I mean, unless you all tell me no, there really is nothing for me to stop them from adding that request. And so we're stuck in this kind of incremental cycle. And then ultimately, if this board decides in the spring to start talking about any salary changes, upward salary changes again, we're just going to exacerbate the issue, right? So I'm trying to find kind of a multi-pronged approach to it that really forces the department heads to really think hard. But I like the suggestion of getting feedback ideas from the board as well, because ultimately that's part of that feedback process that we want to have happen.
Dr. Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, President Luna Rose, and thank you, Ms. Shaw, for just talking about just different sources of funding. And we went through a lot of this last year with this whole exercise in terms of trying to figure out, especially with the ESSER-funded positions, that we felt, that the staff felt, our leadership team felt, was making the biggest impact to improve outcomes for our students. And we found some sources of funding, whether it's through DSEG, whether it's through Medicaid funding, whether there's Title I, moved some of the positions over to the different funding sources. And I think we're at a place right now where we're kind of stuck because the Title I budget has been cut by the federal government, and who knows what's going to happen in the future year with the government that's coming in January federally. We're already in the deficit budget with our M&O, and there's no room at all in the M&O budget. We're just eating into the carry forward faster if we continue moving things into the M&O budget. And so I know we went into this fiscal year knowing we would probably run a deficit in DSEG and we would have to move it into M&O. So there's no surprise with your first couple of slides. And I think getting with our department leads and figuring out, okay, what is making the highest impact for our students, I think is a really important question to ask. And I appreciate bringing in the community feedback into this process. And I was thinking as you're going through the presentation, should it come in earlier? And I know that each of our 4 student services departments, I think all 4 of them have their own advisory group that I'm hoping would be feeding into some of this process too, to start getting some of that community feedback. And I wish our student services department leads were here to talk about this. And I think anytime that we're talking about DSEG in the future, having this presentation not just be a financial presentation, but having it be partly with department heads of some of our bigger departments in DSEG, so we can hear from them in terms of how they're going to be incorporating that community feedback. That's what really got us last year in that January of 2024 meeting last school year, this calendar year, in terms of not really having that community feedback early and often enough for us to have a successful desegregation budget that really incorporate a lot of that feedback. So I'd love to hear more from our student services departments and other departments that are our biggest budget items in DSEG to kind of learn more as we're going into this process into the next calendar year in the same school year, going into the next fiscal year, how they're going to be using their advisory groups and other forums for them to get their processes or building that budget early on before it even gets to a final budget that we can present for these community forums in the springtime.
Dr. Trujillo.
Tonight is just concept, right? So literally no work has been done yet. So we are going to be building in a series of governing board study sessions where that would exactly happen, where we would bring on different departments once budgets have been developed. So absolutely, I think that that's necessary. I would also like to say that with regard to the difference between this year and last year we were trying to exact cuts on top of an existing and developed budget. That is just hard to do. That's just hard to do in any department. When you've already built a budget, you've already got planned expenditures, and then we have to swoop in and say, okay, we need X amount of dollars. This time it's budget development. So the budget has not been developed at all. We're going to be working with our departments on building the budget according to a new capacity. But where the board's feedback comes in is in budget development, every single DSEG funded department is going to share in the reduced overall budgetary capacity necessary to erase the deficit. Where the board comes in is you may feel that some services, some departments should not see any cuts at all, which would then have the effect of the remaining departments sharing a little bit more of the reduced financial capacity. So that's really where we would need your feedback. Because when we start with budget development, it's an assumption that every single program is going to be operating with just a little bit less. We've never really had any working budgetary sessions with the DSEG departments. The legacy has always been, I get this amount and that's it and that's all. We've never really asked, okay, what's changed? What's been effective? What's not been effective? You haven't been able to fill these positions last year. This is a great example. DSEG Department A, they might get X amount of dollars, and let's say that $150,000 might have been for 3 positions that they never filled, and that was still remaining, and they still exhibited departmental functionality and success. And when we say, okay, so the $150,000, can we move it to another student services area? Can we move it into transportation? No, we need it all. So we're going from there to now this exercise where we want to take a close examination of all of the dollars that we're spending and not just involve the director, but actually now with zero-based budgeting, it's going to require the entire department to really come together. I think a series of public study sessions throughout the spring for the board. You take a look at your biggest departments and they come and they present. Okay, here's our draft. Here's what the impact is going to be. This is what we're going to be able to do. I think that's right on. I think that's what needs to happen, as well as posting drafts online for public comment. So not everybody's going to be able to make it to a board meeting. Not everybody's going to be able to even make it to one of our informational sessions. But having all of our drafts posted online so that anybody can weigh in, I think is going to be important in accomplishing our mission of communicating broadly and transparently the process and the content of a budget that you'll inevitably see in June.
I will add one thing is the zero-based budgeting can go in both directions too. this is obviously, we're all starting from zero, but if we identify that some departments are not being funded at the levels that they should be funded, right? That, that they're at X and it needs to be X times 2, that approach also will identify those. Obviously, again, whack-a-mole, right? Something's got to give on the other side of the equation. But, because everybody's so used to getting the same allocation, including the departments that are small, we have very small departments that have very meaningful, impactful work. Culturally relevant pedagogy and instruction, right? They don't even get $1 million. Multicultural curriculum, she doesn't even get $1 million, right? But these two departments that have a huge instructional impact, especially through professional development, need resources. But sometimes they're competing against fine arts, language acquisition, GATE, APARS, Asian, Mexican, or African American Student Services. As a clarifying point, Native American Student Services does not receive desegregation funding. So it becomes a little bit daunting for these smaller departments to compete against bigger departments because they're just bigger, right? And so this is an exercise that is not only meant to help us balance, but also yield benefits for those departments that maybe have been left behind.
I have a question. And then I'll get Mr. Romero. So the zero-based budgeting, this is just a sort of an aside question. Do other entities and municipalities use this type of?
So I've talked to nobody in Arizona that I've been able to find. I have talked to other entities. Two big ones that I have discovered: City of San Diego does zero-based budgeting. They select specific departments, though. They don't do it municipality-wide. Whereas San Antonio, Texas, they do the whole city is an entirely zero-based. City of Dallas is working on it. So I've heard feedback from different, colleagues of mine across the country that work in school districts, but I've also heard from non-school district people who have told me the good, the bad, and the ugly. This isn't a perfect approach, but it has allowed them to really kind of pull back the subjectiveness that happens with budgeting sometimes and really take a look at performance measures, objectives, things of that nature that are a little bit more objective.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Romero.
Yeah, so early on, you had mentioned currently there's things that are not happening at the department level. And I think going with a zero base will bring accountability to these different departments, find out where they can be more efficient with using the money. And again, like I said, split them on out. And if there are positions that have not been fulfilled and they're still being successful in that, where we can maneuver those, like you mentioned, departments that need more funding for that. Based on a lot of things that you've talked about, I am encouraged about the zero-based.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Just checking if we'll be meeting with our desegregation plaintiff representatives and where in this timeline we would be meeting with them.
I believe that is an item of legal guidance, and I think that would probably be more of an executive session discussion, perhaps Mr. Ross. But however, in the capacity that the former plaintiffs' representatives are community members, this is open to any community member, and they would certainly be invited to any one of our public study sessions, any one of our board meetings. But in terms of their capacity as actual active plaintiffs, I think that's more of a legal guidance item. I'll turn over to Rob.
It probably is a good executive session discussion, except to note that the case is closed. So from the district court perspective, so there's no requirement in the post-unitary plan for that. But again, like Dr. Trujillo said, that doesn't preclude consultation with folks as community members.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Ekstrom.
Thank you. APARS, how much of funding is through desegregation?
I believe it's about $600,000. It's a very small amount of money in APARS.
Okay, because are we looking at how that department is growing and how much they're actually doing? So I guess those are the kinds of, that's the kind of information that I would like to see before we have any discussion as a board here, because in meeting with that department, I understand that their functions have grown, and so their needs are more. So I think maybe having the presentations from the departments would be helpful.
Okay.
Okay, anything further? All right, thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
All right, I do believe we're getting towards the end here. Future meeting dates and agenda items. Dr. Trujillo.
President Luna Rose, members of the governing board, our next meeting is going to be December 10th, and then it's going to be a long haul for our community members waiting for the next meeting. We will not convene again until January 14th. But in terms of December 10th, we certainly are going to be having a holiday performance to be announced, so you'll enjoy that. We've got the long-awaited audit committee charter will be up for board consideration, and then we'll have a report on DAPE and a recommendation for DAPE to extend the amount of time that students have access to DAPE. So those are two big items coming up on December 10th.
Okay. All right. I do believe that's a wrap for this evening, and happy Thanksgiving to all of those who celebrate, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Jerry. Cheers.